Data management. It's critical to maintain your data. Of course, we all need to maintain our data. I've lost data before. As usual, turn on the computer, boot up the hard drive, and I hear a click, 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 click. The drive didn't mount on the desktop. So I went online and I found this data recovery company in San Francisco, and I packed the hard drive in multiple layers of bubble wrap. And their cost to recover data could have gone up to $4,500 to recover the data on the disk. I was willing to pay anything. Once they looked at the disk, they had found that the disk was totally destroyed and not usable at all. And the way disks work, it's like one plastic piece, just like a CD, except on top is magnetic material like a piece of tape. And then above that magnetic material is a little arm that spits out magnetic flux like a tape head would. And the disk spins and spins and spins very fast. And this thing moves around and spits out magnetic data, zeros and ones, on different sectors of the disk. And then there's a directory on the disk that keeps track of where all the data is stored. And then later it reads it back and reconstructs it in your computer. Unbelievably technical how they got to be able to do that. It was pretty cool. The problem with my disk was the little arm that hangs over the disk, and the disk is spinning at 7,200 RPM. And something mechanically broke and it landed on the disk. And it just lathed off all of the magnetic material, and it was just in shreds when they opened up the disk. So there was no way to get the data back. And when they called me to tell me, I remember it was right around Christmas. And it took me literally 3 months to re-record everything I'd done. Needless to say, it makes a really good case for knowing how to store data and store data properly. And it's not as easy as it sounds. I know you guys all have computers, and I'm sure that you don't think much about it because power up your computer, it works, and just like your phone. But think about it. If you opened up your computer and the screen was blank, what would you do? Like, I've got all my stuff in there. Or your phone. I don't even remember phone numbers anymore. Like, how would I find people again? It'd be horrible. It's critical to maintain your data. Your data is a master generation material. It's only one, like the master. And data longevity is extremely important. So how long is your data safely stored? Okay, so let's say you do all this backup just perfectly and you're working on Pro Tools or Logic or whatever you're doing, and then you come back 5 years later because you want to remix your song because it's really great, and now you got a record deal and they want that recording, and you go to Pro Tools and you load it up and Pro Tools goes, I don't know what this is. The program's changed. They can't read this data anymore. What's a WAV file? Then all of a sudden you're like, what am I going to do? Because things have changed so drastically, people will find CDs 25 years from now and go, what are these things? It's really important to not just back it up, but to also migrate it to the newest formats. Otherwise, pretty soon you'll turn around and your computer won't be able to understand it. Data integrity, whether the data is stored faithfully, will errors occur in time? They always will occur. Data errors are always going to happen. So I thought about this a lot, about data longevity and storage, and I came up with this. Longevity is inversely proportional to the ease of commercial distribution. 2000 BC, people were writing on stones. Last thousands of years, the Rosetta Stone still exists. Paper can last hundreds of years if it's acid-free. Film can last 100 to 200 years. Audio tape can last 50 to 100 years. Digital CDRs, 5 to 7 years. Flash storage, 2 to 5 years. Your MP3s are just send them off into the internet and they're in the ether and then they're gone. It's great because you can, from your computer, transport all this music to millions of people at once and distribute easily. You couldn't do that with a piece of stone, but the stone will last a lot longer. That's something to consider when you're backing up your data. Tape is a really good backup storage device because it actually lasts a long time, but it also has its problems. You have to handle it properly, use tape in a clean environment, avoid contamination of dirt and dust, fingerprints, food, cigarette smoke, ash, airborne pollutants. Take care of not to drop your tapes. Be sure not to drop your hard drives. That would be a real problem. So there's a couple rules for storage for tapes. Not that you all have tapes. It's interesting because there are a lot of archival tapes, lectures from very famous people that are on tape, all sorts of historic tapes that aren't only on film, but they're on magnetic tape. And this is the size of tape versus debris. Right here in the middle is a human hair. So the smallest amount of dust can really upset how the tape works. And then I gave you a little chart just for your interest as to the perfect temperature and relative humidity to store tapes at. And this has been analyzed by a lot of people in a lot of societies. And in time, tape breaks down to what they call sticky tape syndrome. And what it is that the binder starts breaking down, it starts getting to be sticky, and so you play it on your machine and all of the magnetic material starts falling off of it, which is what you don't want to have happen. You need to bake them very low temperature. I think Ampex recommends 122 degrees in a convection oven for 48 hours. And to dehumidify them, tape rebinds itself and you can play it. And you can do that over 50 different times. It works perfectly without any fidelity loss. It's kind of like potato chips sit out in a humid environment. And then you taste them and they're not crunchy anymore. You take them, if you put them in an oven at a low temperature for a few minutes, all of a sudden they get crunchy again because the humidity comes out. Same sort of thing with the sticky tape syndrome. I do a lot of that tape restoration. For example, in Chicago, they've got all these tapes from the 30s, 40s, 50s of all of these historic blues and jazz musicians that they have in their vaults. And they don't know what to do with them because they can't play them. So they have to take them to somebody like me who can take them one by one, repair them, make them play again, and transfer them into another format where they could digitally disseminate.